All right, welcome back to the Buddy Book Club. I'm Dylan, here with my co-host Keith, the Irish god of loud chewing. What's up, buddy?
Thank you for that introduction.
I mean, it's a fact, you know, whether it be Cheerios or baby carrots.
We've had this debate
like
before. You need air in your mouth for certain foods to make them taste better. That's just fact. That's not even an opinion.
All right, well, we're here with you to break down some bestsellers. This week, we're digging into Neil Gaiman's American Gods. If you'd like to reach out to us regarding this book or any of our past or future episodes, you can visit our website, buddybookclub.com, or slide into our DMs on Twitter or Instagram, Buddy Book Club Podcast on Instagram. Keith puts up some highlights or lowlights, I guess, up on the Instagram page. So check those out and follow along. And as always, you can listen to us on iTunes. So please download and subscribe for sure. Keith, have you read any Neil Gaiman books before this?
Yes, I read Neverwhere.
Oh, Neverwhere. Okay.
Yeah, so it had a similar vibe, a little bit different, but very similar in the vibe of like kind of you're in the real world, but you're also not in the real world type of feel. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's kind of his thing throughout. I mean, I've read Anansi Boys, which has a character that goes between these two worlds, Stardust and Sandman. Sandman, by the way, if you're an Audible guy, Sandman is on Audible, and I think it's an Audible exclusive. It's great. I mean, star-studded cast led by Gaiman, who narrates, and James McAvoy. I mean, the entire cast is people that you'd recognize, but that was really good. Sandman comics are great. I mean, I haven't read all of them, I don't think, but they're like graphic novels that he did that super well illustrated, and it's a great story. But yeah, I mean, he definitely operates in this wonderful fantasy world that touches on the real world. So that's what we're going to be getting into with American Gods as well. So let's just get into American Gods, I guess. It's Gaiman's fourth novel, winner of the Hugo and Nebula Awards, both given to the best science fiction and fantasy novels during a given year. Hugo is the most prestigious sci-fi/fantasy award, so that's quite a feat for him. You listened to the audiobook, correct?
Yep.
As did I. Usually Keith kind of listens to the audiobook and I read the book. Just, I feel like sometimes, you know, you get different perspectives that way. But this one had an ensemble cast, and I just love ensemble casts when you're reading an audiobook. It's like getting a super long movie, which I love. So I listened as well. We both listened to the 10th anniversary edition, right?
Yeah, so it had the additional text. I think it was 12,000 additional words.
It's a director's cut, basically.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's like if there's a director's cut in a movie, like I'm clicking on that first. Like, hello, aliens.
Although,
like
my buddy just watched the Town's director's cut, and he said it was terrible. He said if there wasn't an editor for it, it would have been like an awful movie. So, like the editor made the movie so much better. Yeah. So
interesting. I always feel like the director's cut is better. Granted, the Town was did Ben Affleck direct that too?
Yeah, I think so. I think the movie would have been like 3+ hours. There's probably more backstory, but it was a lot of unneeded backstory type stuff. Yeah. So it was just like dragged.
I mean, I'd say 9 times out of 10, I'm down with the director's cut.
All right, we'll have to test that theory.
I mean, it's the people that are running it. It's their job, you know.
Yeah.
I don't. It's not
but
the
if
notes
it's your
that
baby,
the studio.
You don't want to cut out anything
except for the tip of the dick, you know.
Pardon?
So yeah, this is Gaiman's preferred text, and like you said, includes extra 12,000 words. We'll probably get into what we think of, you know, the extra stuff was. Maybe it was clear in the audiobook, I don't know. But American Gods is a super long novel, really. I mean, compared to some of the other stuff that we've read here. The story is basically, you know, after a stint in the clink and a dead wife and best friend, Shadow gets hired as bodyguard to Wednesday, aka Odin, who is on a quest to ensemble the old gods for an inevitable storm that's approaching. And this storm is a battle between the old gods and the new, all taking place on American soil, America. I guess except for the last part, which takes place in Iceland. But that's pretty much the story as is. So I guess before we get into the categories, and which we'll obviously be diving deeper into the story itself, we like to go through a little libation list of what's listed in the book itself. It helps us gather our thoughts and also provide an opportunity for some listeners. So, if you got one in the cupboard, you got one in the fridge, sit back. We're going to be here for 45 minutes, an hour. You might as well pour yourself a drink. So in this particular story, there was a lot, which we appreciate. Jack Daniels made an appearance early and often. Wednesday was drinking it on the plane. Mad Sweeney was drinking SoCo and Coke. That feels like a college or high school vibe, so I'm off on that. We've already talked about Jack Daniels. For some reason, every book we read, there's Jack Daniels involved. I don't know who the Jack Daniels PR person is, but good for them. Have you had mead before?
That's rings a bell. Isn't that just like wine, or what is mead?
It's like a honey wine. They drank it in the bar when Shadow Wednesday and Mad Sweeney were sitting there together.
Yeah,
I think it had some aspects.
I think breweries have it nowadays, right? Like there'll be like I feel like I've had it before, and it's not my cup of mead, if you will, or tea.
Yeah, it's definitely an ancient drink, but we used to do like big dinners on Sunday and for like Game of Thrones and stuff like that, and we'd have themes for the dinners.
I love that a lot.
Yeah, but one of our buddies bought a bunch of different kinds of mead for one of the dinners, like very expensive, and they were in like pint bottles and stuff, all disgusting, like undrinkable, horrible.
That sounds about right.
It was like, this is the good stuff. Holy shit, this is disgusting. So I guess if anyone has any suggestions for good mead, send our way, because that's getting a pass as well for me today, as well as Jameson, which is Mad Sweeney's drink death. I'm done with the whiskey right now. I don't really love the brown. But here's the winner, right? Shadow and Whiskey Jack drink cans of Budweiser by a glacial waterfall in the afterlife. So today I'll be cracking some red and whites and enjoying this podcast with you, my brother.
Very American. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, it's American gods. We're drinking German-American beer.
Oh,
Crack
wow.
that bad boy.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So let's start with pick your character here. This is a long book, so you got a lot of options to choose from. I mean, there's tons of gods in this. There's some mortals involved. Who kind of got it for you in this book? Who'd you enjoy?
Yeah, I also think if you weren't listening to the audiobook, I don't know how you'd keep track of everyone, because I had a tough time even hearing a distinct voice for that person, keeping track of who was who. So that must have been tough for people.
Yeah, I think like if you're like the Ibis and who's the other one? Shoot, see, I'm even forgetting that. But like the two gods who manage in the morgue, like I wouldn't be able to differentiate between Jackal and Ibis.
Right.
Like I wouldn't be able to differentiate between the two.
Yeah, I know the two people, but I wouldn't know those names either. Like I wouldn't be able to spit it out. But my favorite was actually not a god. It was Samantha Blackcrow. I thought she was that was definitely by far my favorite character. And you know the type of characters I like. I like wild cards. I like people that are fucking that just vibe. She had the vibe. I don't know what that means, but she just vibes. You know what I mean? She gets in a car, hitchhikes, just based off nothing. She the only thing she basically was like, let me smell you first. And she's like, all right, you smell good. I'm in. That's the type of person I just fucking love. And then later on in the book, after she got a ride with potentially a murderer, she doesn't know that, but the FBI agents or agents come to her house being like, yo, we're trying to track.
Yeah, it's like Wood in town.
Yeah, we're trying to track down this dude. Like, were you with him? And she basically is like, fuck yourself. I'm not telling you anything. It's like, wait, so you're just going to let this killer go on the wild and just go run off his own? She's like, yeah, that's right. Fuck him. So I was like, all right, I respect that. So it doesn't give a shit about authority at all, which I love. And then she has at the end of the book that really long rant of what she believes. That was fucking awesome.
That was cool.
Yeah.
I did like that rant too. And I think that rant actually played a lot into the story itself, because it was kind of I'll believe a true story. I'll believe a made up story. I'll believe whatever. And it kind of played into this idea that Shadow the whole time is kind of you're wondering why he's playing along with this and not really asking questions. He wasn't Wednesday would be like, oh, we got to go see this guy. And he'd have some crazy sisters with godlike shit. And he'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Sounds good. It's what?
Yeah, it was very weird.
Yeah. So she was great. She also gave Shadow, I think, his only real human kiss of the book, our only
which was my
romance.
Favorite quote of the book, I think.
Oh, don't step on it.
Don't want me to burn it, but I don't laugh out loud ever really on books, on tape. And this time I fucking started laughing. So Yeah, she produced that quote too. So we'll get to that later. But that definitely my favorite. What about you? I'm guessing you're probably more likely on the God side of things.
Yeah, I'm more on the God side of things. And I agree with you. I'm not usually LOLing at books. You know when a book or a movie like gets you to actually laugh out loud, it's like, oh, this is really good. Like even comedies when you're sitting there alone, you usually don't
Right.
laugh out loud. But for my favorite character, I mean, I gotta start off with Bilquis, the ancient queen of Sheba. We're gonna get into that shortly. But she has like a meteoric rise and and then a horrible fall in this story. But I'd say that I got to go with Chernobog. He's the Slavic god of darkness. He's a good guy overall, but he just likes to drink vodka, smoke cigs, and play board games.
And really wants to bash someone's head in. That too.
Yeah, he's really
Yeah.
into bashing people's head. And although he doesn't at the end, and I think that plays into why I like him a lot, because at the end, when Shadow goes back, I was really wondering. I was like, oh, is this going to be like Shadow's death nail? And it makes a lot of sense. Kind of, you could wrap it up either
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, he's not going to kill him. And he was just like, get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. And it was like, dude, Shadow, get out of there. What are you doing? And he was like, no, I'm going to face my fate. It was like, gives him a little tap on the head. It's like when you're playing like the punching game or like bloody knuckles with your buddy, and in cafeteria, and you just give him the soft one, show him some love. So I liked me some Chernobog.
I feel like the people that are most likable in this are like the drunks, which is kind of a weird thing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
well,
Like,
it's funny you say that, because like Mad Sweeney was definitely on my list until he had his demise, which was like
yeah,
blumbering.
that wasn't as good.
Really bad drunk.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, before that, you're like, this guy's fucking hilarious. And then same thing with Mr. Wednesday. When you first meet him, he's drinking and stuff, and you're like, this guy, I kind of like this guy's vibe too. Obviously, he kind of becomes the bad guy, but either way, it seems like the funny, like best characters were all people that were getting a little tipsy. My girl Sam too was chugging wine, right?
Yeah, she was. She got after
Yeah.
it, which is also an appreciative thing. At the dinner party, Shadow brings a bottle of wine, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna fucking get after this wine."
Yeah.
Where everyone else is kind of just lightly sipping.
Yeah.
She's like, "Ah, I'm gonna party."
Respect.
But like I was saying, Mad Sweeney, he kind of starts off, does the good Irish drunk thing where he's like a blast to hang out with, and then next thing you know, he gets like way too wasted and is like gonna kill himself. Like it was like, yikes, bro, chill out. All right, so we got a lot of scenes. We got a lot of scenes in
20
in
hours
this
worth.
book.
So
Yeah, 20 hours worth of scenes. I'd say there's a few memorable ones, but what was most memorable to you?
my favorite scene kind of ties in some of the issues I had with the book is that for me, there wasn't a lot of scenes that I'm going to remember or take away from this because there was too much going on. The story didn't really have, and I'm just someone that likes like a narrative in a story that like you don't leave from. You're just like immersed in it. Like this, there's too much stuff that went on where I was like kind of bored or like kind of being like taken out of the story, which has annoyed me. But my favorite was when Shadow confronted Hinzelman and basically was like, "Oh, I know you're the fucking dude that has been killing people and basically burying them in the lake or whatever, or in the cars." If this book was basically centered around the small town and the small town vibe in general, I really liked that. The characters in that, how they built that up. Had they done that, and then the big reveal at the end was that Hinzelman was this dude, like I kind of predicted it by that point because.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like, oh, it must have been the old dude that's doing this, and it must be the car. I honestly like figured it out. But if you had built the whole book around this town and just like gods coming in and out and all this shit, and all it was a town, you would definitely have been much more blindsided by that fact that happened. So I thought that was a cool scene, and the confrontation they had was pretty cool. Honorable mentions for me: your girl Billiquis, pussy consumption scene.
You really went through that sentence fast. What was that? What did Bilquis do?
Yeah, pussy consumption.
Oh my god, that just doesn't sound right.
Well, that's what it was.
Okay,
It was the opposite of eating.
You like that
it
one.
was consumption.
Yeah.
And then the cab guy was kind of funny too. So those are pretty funny.
Oh
those are
yeah,
honorable
yeah.
mentions that were
The
just-
gin.
Yeah, that were kind of quite the juxtaposition between those stories. I think we talked about it, and the hour-long slavery story, which was the most depressing thing ever. So yeah, quite different. What about you for favorite scenes?
The gin was the genie, the Afrit, and he was like a taxi driver.
Yeah.
And then he met that guy Salim, and they had sex, and then they swapped lives. Like Celine
It
became
was
the genie or something.
it was some stuff going on. That one 0 to 100
Yeah,
very quick. I mean, it was
really quick. Like,
same thing with Billiquist one though too. You're like, wait, what?
well, so that's, I mean, okay, that's one of my favorite scenes, mostly because it happens so early on. It's like, smash cut to this Bilquist character who we're like, oh, okay, she's a prostitute or something like that. And then dude, same note I have, except I didn't use the P word. I said vagina like a grown man. Okay. But I was like, she consumes the guy with her fucking vagina. Like, what? Like,
Tell me
and
pussy
you know,
consumption doesn't roll off the tongue better. Come on, kid.
it sounds more like a female punk band from the 80s or something.
Yeah, that's a compliment, right?
Yeah, for sure. But, it's in chapter 1, and then you just meet this character who consumes a guy with her vagina, and like I'm just visualizing like, this snake, extending its jaws and just eating that thing up. So, unfortunately, she didn't have much more after that,
Yeah.
because I was like, oh, this is going to be the bad guy. She's going to tempt Shadow at some time, and he's going to like fight it off. What's the worm in Star Wars that Boba Fett gets thrown into? The
Oh,
Zarlak pit or something?
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But that's basically what it was in human
Yeah.
form. So I really liked that scene just because it was definitely like the most vivid and whoa scenes. But on a lighter note, I really liked stargazing when Shadow goes to visit Chernobog and I think there were three sisters, but Zorya Polunochaya.
Spot on. That sounds right.
Yeah. But they talk about the monsters and the stars and the whole idea of just like, astronomy playing into this. And, if you've ever sat there and just looked at stars, it's an enjoyable, but they had a really like interesting conversation about it. And I always love that idea of just like no ancient cultures, like no tablets, no phones, just staring up at the stars and making stories of constellations. So I really enjoyed that scene.
Okay.
It was just two happy people having a happy time.
I respect it. Okay.
It was really all I had for scenes. I mean, there's stuff that's later, but I found a bunch of it to be kind of confusing.
Yeah.
I mean, Gaiman's prose, like kind of like the way he writes this stuff, is all these like paragraph long sentences, which I like in that they're usually like very descriptive. So you can like see what he's writing like in your mind, but it often goes against trying to like comprehend the plot where it's like, okay, I understand this scene, but like how does this play into the greater story? And then the next thing you know, you've moved on from that and you're like somewhere else doing something totally different.
Yeah, or like I also kind of had, I have an issue with dreams, but there'd just be dreams that would be like, what are we doing here? Like, what's going on? And then they'd be like, all right, that's the end of that. It's like, wait, what? It was like reading a 20-hour poetry book. That's what it was kind of like. There was just a lot of poetry, it seemed like, which I'm not a big poetry person. I can appreciate it, but 20 hours of it, I was like very out of the book by the end of it. I could not. It's just tough for me to get in. For me, it's like it's a movie in my head. That's like how I like to think of books when they're good. Harry Potter, I don't even know I'm reading or listening to it. I'm just in the world. You're looking over there.
Thank you for our first Harry Potter
Thank
drop.
you. Yep.
I appreciate that.
You know what I'm saying? Like you're literally in the world, and every character, every side character, you can picture them, and they have some role in the story. Where they introduce like 50 people that have nothing to do with anything. There's like basically the only people driving the actual narrative of the story are Mr. Wednesday and Shadow. But Shadow's just like on along for the ride. Every single person they meet they don't do anything, right? Like they're not like key parts in the story in any way. Like I don't know. That was my biggest issue, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, but at the same time, I think that's kind of like the point is that there's just like all these forgotten gods that are in America because like America is such a melting pot of all these different cultures who brought here their gods and then now have moved on from them, so that in order to like understand the scope of what's going on in terms of this like old god, new god stuff, you have to like put a lot of characters into it. Otherwise, like the final fight, the final battle, is just like, wait, so like Wednesday's got a bunch of people that don't matter that we don't know about now fighting. What about the side stories? So a few times in this, which actually I think is what the added parts were that Gaiman brought back. And I'm mostly saying that because A, they really have nothing to do with the story. And B, in the audiobook, Gaiman's the one who like narrates those sections. So I bet he was just like, all right, yeah, just keep the old stuff and then I'll do this part of the audiobook. So, you said the African stuff, Alegba and the Great Mawu, were those slaves worshipped by were the gods worshipped by the slaves. And then there was that other story. I can't remember what it was, but I thought that was pretty good too. The Irish woman or whatever coming across and like her children basically kind of explaining how quickly like, she prayed to the gods and whatnot after she came across. And then now her kids just aren't interested at all. So kind of showing how the gods faded. But how did you like those stories, or were they?
I think those stories were good, but again, like if though you put those stories in a traditional narrative that's like very clear cut, and then you have a side story like that, it resonates much more with you. But the problem with this was like you have 100 of those stories, so like you can't keep track of everything. All right, like it's just like you're jumping around so much that like. At least my brain, it doesn't work that way. I just can't remember, or I can't picture that stuff because there's too much going on now. So like you'd say those things and I remember them, but like when I look back at the book, I can't remember those stories being impactful to me in any way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it almost had like a Tolkien-esque vibe where there was just like so many of these like ancient and potentially interesting characters that like didn't get fleshed out, that you assumed like, oh, Gaiman's like just setting this up so that like future books, he can just like devote an entire book to this character, which I don't know. I guess we'll get into this later, but I think that plays to like what he really like. He just really knows a lot about the whole situation.
I didn't have that issue with Neverworld. He did the same thing where he introduced, but I thought like because they're on a journey and it was very like clear cut, it wasn't nearly as bad. And then I've read books that are 50-hour books, so double the time, and they don't seem nearly as long or confusing. And then they introduce more characters obviously than this, and you know who they are because like they're well established within the story. You know their role in the story. They don't establish these characters within the story, so it's hard to follow what their purpose.
Okay, yeah, I have a few more questions, but I think we're going to get to this later in one of these other sections because I have some notes on that. It's really interesting. I just thought there were a lot of characters that didn't really drive the narrative, but the narrative itself I found a little bit hard to follow.
I'm just not smart enough for this type of book, and that's what it felt like the whole time reading, being like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, what, am I dumb? And I think the answer is yes.
All right, so that's kind of the question I was going to ask. Is like, was it really just Gaiman flexing his muscles, being like, hey, I've done a ton of research and I know all these gods, so I'm going to tell you about all the gods I know. Are you smart enough to keep up?
Yeah, I just get frustrated when people are like, feel like, yeah, you're an idiot. You can't even understand this. I'm like, hey, fuck you, buddy. I take it personal, whatever.
Hey, fuck you, buddy. All right. So we got some scenes in there. What about Stock Up, Stock Down? Let's start off with Stock Up. This is a section that is pretty undefined, but the idea being what was introduced in the book that you would now, want to invest in a little bit potentially. And what are the stocks that you're selling? So stock up first.
Yeah.
What do you got?
So this one's a really, really big stock up for me. And you have mentioned in the past that your biggest thing is wanting to go into a bar and the bar keep being like, oh, there's D-Man, and sliding the drink to you before you even get there.
Yes, it's my dream.
Mine is similar, but it's with diners. I am a huge diner proponent, and diners were a big thing in this. And they always talked about stopping off the side, a road of diners and what they were getting and everything like that. And I fucking love diners, and I would love nothing more. And I used to have this place out here in San Diego. It got closed down due to COVID. I actually messaged the guy, tried to buy it from him because that's how much I loved it. But
wait,
yeah,
what?
That's right. I love diners so much. I used to go to this place all the time, and these people were like, yep, these two sit over there. You're good to go. Had the coffees ready for us, had our orders ready. They knew exactly how I liked everything. Best place in the world. And I need that. And this book brought it out to me. I love diners.
So let me ask the important question. Yeah. What's your diner order?
So I had two there. Depends on what, and they knew.
So how did they know?
Well, they would be like, which one do you want, pretty much at this point.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, I have a sub place where they do the same thing, which is great, but it's not the same sit down feel.
Let's stick with the diners. What's your diner?
Yeah, I go eggs over easy because I can't make them, but diners can. This place had hash browns. You had to get them well done, otherwise they're basically potatoes, but they were fire as well done.
Mm-hmm.
Toast bacon, large iced coffee. Call it a day. It's fucking.
That sounds.
Yeah,
phenomenal.
it's just a fastball right down the middle order. If I were getting fancy, they had really good omelets too, and then pancakes if I'm feeling myself a little bit. You know what I mean?
Breakfast dessert. Yeah, a little breakfast dessert.
Exactly. Yeah.
A short stack on the side.
Yeah. What about you?
I mean, that's my favorite thing about diners is because, if I'm making breakfast, I'm either going to make sweet or I'm going to make savory. Mm-hmm. But, I'm not making both. So like the actual option of like a cheap option of doing both of them is great. Hence why my order at every diner I go to is whatever their like Hungry Man special is.
Yeah.
I'm getting the Hungry Man special every time. It's usually like 12 or 13 bucks.
Yep.
And I'll upgrade to the waffle because I like waffles more than pancakes. So yeah, I'll pay the extra $1 for the waffle, no problem. But yeah, give me those eggs. I want them runny. Mm-hmm, That's it. So I appreciate that you like that as well. Fucking diners. Diners have that's a good call with this. I mean, can diner stock get any higher? I
don't know. They can't for me, but I'm still buying it. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, exactly. It's Tesla right now. Let's just keep buying.
What about you?
Stock up for me. First one was coin tricks / magic. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think about magic, we're like, oh, this like shitty clown that's coming and doing animal balloons. The coin tricks in here were like super well done. He explained them really well. And then Shadow, like when he's explaining to the one kid about, where you want people to look and what your hands are actually doing. I found that to be just like really interesting. And it, like, obviously I can't do any coin tricks, but if someone handed me a coin trick book right now, I'd try one. You know what I mean? I would at least try it. And I thought that they were like super well described, and magic is usually not something that people are really into these days, unless it's David Blaine or something along those lines. But I found like the basic, sleight of hand coin stuff to be interesting. And then also the way they played with it into the storyline between, Shadow and Mad Sweeney, and then Shadow and Laura with the coin actually bringing her back to life. And then additionally, at the end when he's sitting there with, Odin, the Icelandic Odin, and he does his coin trick that Odin actually seems to enjoy. And then after that, he does like real magic and like actually pulling the coin from the air, which I think kind of showed that like he is part god, and that was cool. So coin tricks in general, stock up, baby.
Yep, I'll give that to you. They definitely Billquist, if you will, the shit out of magic in this one.
They Billquisted magic.
Yeah.
So you're using Billquist as a verb. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's right.
I hope you work that into your daily life. Yeah. What else did you have for stock up?
I also had sniff test, which I already went over. Just earlier, when you come across a hitchhiker or someone that's picking up a hitchhike, you just sniff them, and I guess that's it. So yeah,
I mean, it checks out.
Which dogs do it, right? Like dogs can kind of determine if you're trustworthy by sniffing you. So I think they might be onto something here. I actually don't hate the test at all.
Yeah. And I think along the same lines, we had previously stalked down hitchhiking in our other podcast, but stock up for hitchhiking. All good things happened with hitchhiking. I mean, even Laura, granted she ended up killing the guy, so maybe not for Mr. Wood or Mr. Town, whoever that was, but it helped the narrative. So hitchhiking worked out for most people in this story. The afterlife was a big stock up for me. I'm not really, I'm not sitting here fretting my death, but now after reading this book, I'm like, hey, in the afterlife, you get to chill by a glacial waterfall with a Native American god and tilt back some Bud Heavies, some red and whites. Like, yeah, I'm in. Kill me now.
Okay. Yeah, a little bit dark, but hey, sometimes you gotta go dark to get where you need to get. I got you.
Yeah, that's what Shadow had to do. But yeah, in all the afterlife, the way they played it out, there seemed to be options. It wasn't like the normal narrative we get is like heaven or hell or nothing.
Yeah.
That's kind of your thing, is like you either believe in that there's some afterlife, there's a good one and a bad one, or it's just nothing. But in this situation, he goes down there. They're like, "Hey, where do you want to go?"
Yeah.
It's like
Choose your own adventure.
It's a
Yeah.
restaurant. Choose your own adventure novel. Yeah. So if the afterlife's a choose your own adventure novel, and one of the options is hang out by a glacier waterfall,
Yeah.
I'm in. Sign me up. Did you have any other stock ups?
I had one more, and then I had one that could have been up or down. Baths was stock up for me. I don't know why he liked baths so much, but he was like, first thing I do is I'm going to get a bath, which is frankly weird to me. I don't know what your thoughts were on baths, but I kind of am in line with Kramer from Seinfeld, which he basically says, it's disgusting. I'm sitting there in a tepid pool of my own filth. All kinds of microscopic parasites and organisms having sex all around me. Like, yeah, that's what it is. That's a bath. So I don't know why that's up, but it was also at like a penny stock right before this. So
yeah, baths have really gone out of favor in America.
I mean, hot tubs is a different story. Hot tubs I fucking love. Which
see, I think hot tubs are disgusting. Like I'm hard pass. I'm not getting in a public hot tub with a bunch of random people. But back to your point, baths, I'm in for. I haven't had a bath in a while. I have showered, but I think that the idea being, if I was to take a bath now, I would probably confirm the bathtub was clean, and then I would probably shower first, and then I'd get in the bath and I'd soak, and it'd be great. I used to be a big bath guy, like in high school, middle school. I'd just read a book. It was awesome.
But here's the problem with that. I always would do that, and then the book would just be soaked by the end of it. You see what I'm saying?
But now we have Kindles and stuff. Like the world is changing.
Yeah, I guess I haven't done it since then. So
neither have I. So yeah, bath stock up. Stock up. We're in for baths. What was your flippy floppy stock up, stock down? You don't know.
Being hanged and showing your endowment, stock up or down. So this all really depends about your endowment. But I don't know if you caught this, but in the book, I don't remember when.
This is not going where I expected.
In the book, I don't remember the scene. I just wrote it down, but someone gets hanged, and he talks about how their erection was just fucking popping out when they're hanged. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, what are they talking about? But this is actually true. This actually really happens. It's called death erection or angel lust or terminal erection. That's the naming for it.
What?
This is real. So, but imagine being killed, hanged, right? And you're Keith, or no, never mind, not me. You're someone that has, and you're basically showing the 2-inch guy, and you're dead. Not only are you getting hanged, but you're getting embarrassed in front of everyone you know and love, right? Or you come out and you're fucking throwing a 10-inch guy, and you're just fucking elephant hog out there.
What fuck?
And people are like, holy shit. All right, that wasn't bad. So either it's up or down depending on that. Too far? Too not far? Too fast, too furious?
I mean, we like to take things real seriously around here, so I'm going to answer you seriously.
Okay.
I think it's a stock up for me.
Oh, wow. Look at this
physically
guy.
And emotionally.
Look at this guy.
No, hold on. Let me explain myself. Because some of us are growers and not showers. So originally we'd be hanging and it'd be like, oh, this is bad.
You're not naked when you're hanging. I'm saying you basically would be showing all of a sudden.
Oh, you're not naked?
No, it's just like all of a sudden you're seeing someone's tent on their pants.
Oh, okay.
I assume you're not naked. I don't know. I was hanging naked.
Yeah, I think you're hanging naked. In which case, if you were, there'd originally be some like, oh, yeah, this ain't that great, unfortunately. And then as what did you call it? The angel lust happens. It's like, oh, actually, it's not half bad.
Yeah. That's true. That's a under promise, over perform type of mentality, which I appreciate.
So for me, that's a stock up or maybe wood up.
Fair enough.
And let's not take light of hanging. That's horrible. And yes.
Yeah.
Well, with that, let's get into stock down. What are you selling? What stocks are you selling after reading this book?
And this was the case in his other book too that I read. Stock down, believing in magic. Like all of his characters, they introduce them to magic, and right away they're like, yeah, this is just like something just happening here. I don't really believe in it, and it's just like whatever. For me, I see a magic trick and I'm like, holy shit, this dude's a magician, like literally from Harry Potter. I believe in 1 second something is like, I'll see a fucking shooting star and be like, holy shit, aliens are here. You know, like I'm there. I'm ready to believe instantly. And like everyone in this book are like zero curiosity, being like, yeah, like he's not even excited about anything. Like what's going on here? I don't know.
Yeah.
I stocked down. I was like depressed. I was like, holy shit, something magical happened in front of me. Would I just be like, whatever?
I'm with you though. Like when I first saw David Blaine's Street Magic, I don't know if you've seen that DVD.
Yeah. Have you seen the parody of it too? It's pretty.
Yeah,
awesome.
The parody is awesome.
Yeah.
But the original one, when I saw it, I was like, this man is not human. I used to like at lacrosse team dinners, I would put that on. Like I'd bring the DVD to people's houses and just put it on. But the idea being, I was like, I just need to show this to everyone.
Yeah.
Like if it was on my phone, we did most of our team dinners at Papagino's. But
oh, I love that. Holy shit.
yeah.
But
on Tuesdays, all you could eat pizza. But yeah, I would just put it on at people's houses, like hoping that someone else would be with me and identify that this was not a human we were seeing, but some sort of alien. Unfortunately, the internet came out shortly after that. And, you know, I go on and I look this stuff up and everyone's like, oh, here's how it works. And I hate that stuff. And I hate myself for looking at it. But I'm with you. Shadow really didn't. Like, he wasn't amazed by any of this stuff.
Some excitement. Like,
I didn't know if it was because he was kind of dead inside after the whole, like, Laura blowing his best friend and then them dying on the highway, that he was just like, whatever. Like, nothing matters anymore. Which kind of, if there's one thing I didn't like about Shadow, was just that he was just too even-keeled about everything.
Yeah.
I didn't like that part of him. Maybe some people did, but...
Yeah, like the first scene when he meets Mr. Wednesday and Mr. Wednesday is basically like telling him everything about him, and he's like, all right, I just gotta sleep, man. I'm like, what's going on here? If I got on a plane and someone's like, hey Keith, I know everything about you, I'd be like, holy shit, how do you like, I'd have a couple follow-up questions maybe, but that's just me.
Especially if you'd like been in jail, like surrounded by 3 walls and like nothing interesting.
He's like, whatever.
And then all of a sudden someone like knows everything about you.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh my God, am I Jason Bourne? Like, is this going to become a Jason Bourne movie?
Seriously.
Okay. Stock down for me, I had Christopher Columbus. He kind of takes a beating in a brief part of this book, and rightfully so. As an Italian man, I'm out on Christopher Columbus. I've totally kicked him out of the Italian heritage. But Ibis,
I thought you're a Sopranos fan, and didn't they like riot?
I
or
know.
Something?
That is a great Sopranos episode. It really is. And talk about dream sequences. You hate those.
Jesus.
But Ibis really gives Christopher Columbus a beating. I mean, at this point of the book, I almost felt like Neil Gaiman had it out for Christopher Columbus and just like needed an outlet and was like, in the middle of this giant novel, I'm going to go for like 3 pages on how Christopher Columbus did not find America. Like, obviously we know that there were people living here, so duh, he didn't find it. I mean, what's more basic than that? But he also breaks down all of the other cultures that at least saw or lived in America, you know, or in the Americas, you know, including Canada. And I looked all those up and they're all true. I mean, it's just fact. And also, there's a great book, not one for our podcast because it would really bore people, but it's called Cod by Mark Kurlansky. And it's basically about the cod industry since its inception, which is like the 1300s. And the Basque people of the Iberian Peninsula were fishing in North American waters way back then. Like, so there's no question they experienced North America and knew how to get there because they came back year after year after year, but they kept it secret because they knew this giant, delicious cod business, you know? So it's like, well, we're not going to tell anyone this. They'll just take over. But yeah, so Christopher Columbus, you didn't find America. Sorry, bro. Pull the statues down. You're a horrible person. Get the fuck out of here. Christopher Columbus was stock down. I'm selling.
I mean, honestly, his stock's been going down for a while, but like, it's marketing 101. Like, he marketed himself well, like, you know? Yeah, Apple didn't make the first MP3 player. There was MP3 players before that, you know, but they fucking overtook them because they just marketed themselves better. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I had one of those early MP3 players. They were horrible. The Views, I think it was called, or something.
They were not good, but that's neither here nor there. stock down for me. Last one here was the police work in this. So in the small town specifically, someone goes missing every year for the last like 50 years, right? And not a peep, not one peep, not
That
like
checks
a
out.
not anything. And then Shadow shows up to town again. Someone goes missing, and Chad Mulligan walks up to his door, knocks on his door, like, "Hey, did you kill and rape this chick? Like, based on what? Like, can you just go up to someone and start questioning them instantly because something bad happens in the town? Like, holy shit, 0 to 100 again in this book. Oh yeah, and then also Chad just kind of shoots the dude because he didn't like him at the end of the book, which I didn't have really an issue with, but at the same time, it's not the best police work, I would say. So stock down on police work overall here.
I'm going to give Chad Mulligan a break. I also think that this whole Lakeside thing was like an Odin job. Like Odin was all in on that. And so he ratted Shadow out, to get him, into custody, basically, so that then Loki could find him because, he hid him there. And then at the right time, he exposed him. And yes, it doesn't really work out with a greater narrative, but in classic police fashion, if you don't have any leads, then some drifter comes into town and someone else dies. It's like, oh, it's this guy, even though you can't really tie it to anything, so that you're at least showing the people that like, oh, this case isn't going to go cold. Like we're working on it. We're doing something. And, I mean, the Chad Mulligan thing I thought at the end was actually pretty interesting. And, he shoots the guy and then Shadow kind of blanks his memory. Like that was fun. Yeah. I liked that aspect of it. It was a good round out to that.
I like Chad Mulligan. I'm not really upset with his character. I'm just like saying the police work overall is kind of a
police work in terms of someone dying in your town every year. Like
maybe
the same time,
it's like, can you do a little investigation?
Figures something out. It's a small town,
right?
Like what's going on? We're talking Lakeside, Wisconsin.
What was it? 5,000 people or 2,000 or something? That's come on now.
Yeah, and like it wasn't really discussed when he got there. Like, hey, just so you know, like around this time every year, someone goes missing.
He's like, oh, I had to find this book to figure that out. It's like, wait, what? No, people don't know this. Like, what's going on?
All right, so what did you love about this book? It was a big book, like we said.
Yeah.
So. Lot to love, lot to hate, potentially. I know that it didn't super tickle your fancy based on how we've discussed this so far. But let's start off on the positive. What'd you love about it?
Yeah, so I think I already covered it, but the biggest thing I really liked was the small town. It was almost like a Stephen King novel. That small town where they're introducing people. I was invested when that happened. I was like, oh, this is actually kind of like if the book settled in there and then had the flashbacks to other people doing things different outside, and then had just more of like the book centered around the small town America, I would have actually really liked it, I think. But it didn't really do that. But that was my favorite part of the feel there. The characters seemed very real. Yeah, I just like that part.
I like that as well. Yeah, I thought that was really enjoyable. The Lakeside experience. Yeah. I almost wish they had done more, like you said. I wish they had done more with that. Yeah. As opposed to kind of like digging into some of these, like Elvis was in it and Johnny Appleseed, and they really didn't do anything for the story. It was just kind of like, oh, these are interesting, like American icons. They weren't gods. I liked the deeper stuff in terms of like Ibis and the Native American stuff, even the side stories we talked about. I just wish they took some of the other filler out and dug more into the Lakeside thing, because that was cool. And to kind of tie into that, one of the things I loved was just a good road trip. It's a good road trip story at the end of the day. And the details that Gaiman goes into about these, towns and cities, I thought was really fun. Lakeside obviously being a big one, but along the way, the diners we're talking about, the tchotchke shops, stuff like that. It just seemed real. And I guess it did seem real because when Gaiman wrote the book, he did go on a road trip across America. He was like recently living in, I think, Seattle, but he wasn't like, maybe it's not Seattle, I don't know. But he wasn't like super familiar with America, but wanted to write this story about gods in America. And so he said, you know what, I'm going to go on the road and kind of write this story on the road, which I thought was super interesting. And all the places that he references in the book, like all the diners, all the little shops, are real places in America. Like you can go to these places today. So I thought that was cool how he kept those things alive in this story. You
Yeah,
know?
I makes sense. The only problem I had was that it didn't. So most of, I feel like road trip, stories. I'm thinking specifically the movie Road Trip,
I was thinking, like, are you talking about
or
Road Trip
like
the movie?
a Tommy Boy, or like we were the Millers, right? Like those are all like they need to get to point A to point B, and things happen along the way. Where this one was just like, all right, we're going here, we're going here. It's just like, why? You know what I mean? Like it was just kind of a forced road trip instead of a here's the objective, and here are the things that are coming in our way during the objective to get there, which makes it interesting because like if you need to get to a certain place by a certain time and something's holding you back, it makes it much more entertaining. Like, oh, can I get out of this? Whereas this was like, yeah, we're just gonna go to this town. Like, for what reason? You know?
It was like Odin showing up at his lakeside house and being like, "We're leaving. We're going to Vegas." It's like, wait, what? All right, we're going to Vegas.
I wouldn't define it as a road trip book because there's usually like a importance at the end of the trip type thing, where this didn't really have any of it.
Well, it's definitely a road trip book. It's just not a destination. It's life on the road to some degree, but it's not like, get him to the Greek.
Yeah, exactly. Another one. Yeah, that's perfect example.
One of the things I loved, and probably the thing I loved most about this book, was the whole grift aspect. A con, a two-man con specifically.
I do like cons. Yep. Good point.
Yeah. I mean, cons are phenomenal. Like whether it be, Ocean's 11 or even Lost, Sawyer's character was a con man. I mean, every time there's a con involved, the Sting is just one big con, the movie. I don't know if you've seen that, but really good. Robert Redford. I just love any good con. And in this, not only do they talk about a few cons, the Spanish Prisoner, the Pigeon Drop, the Fawny Ring, but they have an entire scene where Wednesday explains the violin con to Shadow, which in itself was a fun part of the book, but it also almost felt like a conversation between Danny Ocean and Rusty.
Yeah.
As they're talking about how to fuck over a casino. I really like that con in general. And then not only specifically, but also how the book as a whole turns out to be just one big two-man con. Mm-hmm. So even though, we're thinking of all these moving pieces and all these different gods and all this stuff going on in this giant book, it's at the end of the day, it's just Odin and Loki pulling a two-man con on the world. Mm-hmm. When you read a book that's this lengthy, you really want a good payoff. And I'm not saying this payoff was like, oh my God, that was an awesome payoff. It's not like the end of Memento or something, but I just liked the idea of how they introduced the idea of the con early, and Odin has lots of comments about the con, but then they kind of brush it off. So you don't really think about it. And then at the end, when Shadow realizes, holy shit, like this thing is just Odin and Loki pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. It was like, oh, this is cool. Like at the end of the day, it was just a good old blood sacrifice. Mm-hmm. So, like the woodland critters in South Park.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I like the con aspect of it. I will say the actual cons they were pulling off, if you go on Wikipedia, you can look at list of confidence tricks. They have like a huge list of actual real cons that people do. I found that out from Sneaky Pete, which is actually a pretty good show. He's a con man.
That's with the guy from Boiler Room?
Yep. Yeah, and Gone in 60 Seconds, which is a Nick Cage movie.
Gone in 60 Seconds,
which, another thing, just leading right into that, Matchstick Men with Nicolas Cage as a great con man movie, which leads into Con Man with Nick Cage in it, or Con Air rather, Con Air rather with Nick Cage in it. So, full circle Nick Cage. That's it.
Put the bunny in the box. Yeah, I love Nick Cage. I'm glad he was brought up during this podcast because I didn't really have him cast in the movie. Granted, he could play like any character, but cons were great. You didn't have anything else for love,
no,
right?
That was it.
So, all right. The last thing I had, I know we've kind of danced around this a lot and talked about it specifically, but the gods, I really liked. I know it didn't really play into the story a ton, and I know we wanted to take some of them out, but holy smokes, Gaiman, he put at least 25 gods from cultures all over the world into this book. I usually like to look up stuff as well as, I'm reading it or something's interesting to me. I did look up those cons. I found them to be really interesting. So I did look that up on
Mm-hmm.
Wikipedia. I'm glad we're on the same
Oh yeah.
page there. But, if I wanted to, like all of these gods, I looked up some of them that were interesting, but his research is all there. It's like, holy smokes, like this is pretty crazy. And I like the idea that they all have different names based on, different cultures that know these gods. I mean, not only was it a lot of studying for Gaiman, but I think it was just really interesting to see how all these cultures have different stuff. And I was actually interested because Jesus wasn't in it. And then at the end,
Yeah, you put him in. Yeah.
they bring Jesus back in. But I have a question for you. When did you know Wednesday was Odin? Because they don't reveal it until the carousel, but the carousel scene, which I didn't really understand. But did you know before that?
No, I knew Shadow's dad was a god, and I assumed it was probably Wednesday. But other than that, I still didn't really understand the ending, to be honest with you. I know that he was the same as Odin, and Odin is the same as Mr. World. I didn't understand what that. I didn't get it at all.
Okay, so just quickly to explain that, from what I understand, is that so Odin died, like he purposely died by sacrificing
Right.
himself to these whatever people. He had also previously set up, like, gave birth to Shadow, or, banged that chick so that then he could have Shadow as a child, and then additionally put Loki into Shadow's cell so that Loki would know Shadow there. And then the idea was that by having Shadow kill himself, like on the tree, was like a blood sacrifice to Odin. So Shadow would be the spark that lit the fight,
Mm-hmm.
and then the entire fight would be a blood sacrifice to Odin. So then Odin would get his power back from this giant god blood sacrifice. And then additionally, Loki, who's the god of chaos, would get his power because of all the chaos that ensued from the gods fighting. Granted, Shadow put an end to that because he kind of figured it out. And then also Laura killed Loki, which they didn't plan for. So Laura kills Loki. Shadow stops the battle so that Odin doesn't get his power back. And then, like, Wednesday, which is like the American version of Odin, never comes back. In theory, but granted, he probably did come back.
Yeah.
Because all it takes a little
Confusing
bit.
as fuck.
Yeah, it's confusing as fuck, for sure. Yeah, I think I like the Norse mythology, and like one of the other things that Gaiman wrote was this Norse book, basically just stories from Norse mythology. I'd say that if someone had some extra credits on Audible, like, it's worth the audiobook, mostly just to go to sleep to, because they're like super fun, ancient stories that Gaiman kind of like rewrites in his own words. But when he was on the plane with Wednesday and they said that there was a guy with like missing one eye, I was like, huh? And then when they said his name was Wednesday, like, I was like, oh, Wednesday, it's named after Woden's Day. Yeah, well, because he also, in the next sentence, he says, like, they say Thursday or something like that. He was like, oh, no, that's something for another man. And I knew Thursday was Thor's Day. So,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, days of the week and months are interesting, too. Because
So you're bringing some other knowledge into the fray here.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
but I do love that stuff. Like, all this, it's interesting, just like all the days of the week and the months are all tied into, ancient gods and really numbers. So, like, the year used to start in March. That's why, like, September and October tie back to like actual numbers. Yeah. And then, January came from like Janus and stuff. But yeah, I just like that stuff. So I found it interesting. But let's get into what I think you want to talk about. What did you hate about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I covered a lot of my issues. One, it was just way too long. If you make this a 10-hour book, I think I give it it's all right. Not my cup of tea, but I can appreciate it. When you make a book this long, 20 hours, and like issue goes back to me feeling like an idiot because I don't understand what's going on, and then deviating from the normal story so much. It made me not like a lot. The dreams, again, really annoying. The tree scene for me, I thought that was... I almost stopped the book there because it was like, how many different ways can you say I'm in pain and I'm struggling on the tree? I'm like, holy shit, we get it. Just die already. Jesus Christ.
Yikes. Tell us how you
Yeah,
really
I got
feel.
upset with that. I was like, this book better be ending soon. And again, it's all about like taking me out of the story and being like, all right, I want to get done with this book, and which happened a lot for this book, which is annoying to me. Yeah, and then overall, you know how much I like the circular, like where everything ties back together. I thought this was kind of anti-circular. There's so many loose ends at the end that didn't really tie up, that didn't have anything to do with anything. That was my biggest things. I think we already kind of covered a lot of them.
Okay, yeah. I mean, to tie a little bit back to what we talked about before, but the lakeside disappearances were one of the things I hated most. And it just wasn't given enough time
Right.
for me to really care or think about. So I didn't really think about the whole
Yeah.
idea of like, oh, there's a bunch of people that are disappearing because it just was kind of in and out.
Exactly.
And then, so when eventually you got the reveal that Hinselman was taking sacrifices every year,
Would have been an amazing reveal.
yeah, it was just less of a big deal because it wasn't fleshed out enough. And it's too bad because it was a great crime. I mean, a serial killer takes up a yearly tradition, like he sets it up for the town, but then uses it to cover up a murder, like right under the nose of the
Yeah.
townsfolk. And then using the trunk of the car was like very Starsky and Hutch, pop the trunk. Let's get a whiff of the new car smell. Do it. I just really like that. And it was like, oh, this is a great way to like kill some people and still stay under the radar. It's like right in front of people's eyes. So unfortunately, I don't think there was enough buildup for that. And then my other hate was just pet names in relationships. Laura calls Shadow Puppy. And
Yeah.
it's super cringy. And especially in the audiobook, when she says puppy, it's just like, she's like, oh, puppy. I'm just like, ugh. Like,
Yeah, especially when they were like having that with like worms and shit crawling out of her mouth as she said it. I was like, oh, gross. I mean,
yeah.
and maybe it was analogous for why those are bad.
How cringy.
Yeah. It's like, and after she said puppy, a cockroach crawled out of her mouth. I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I went on a ski trip with some people and they did the babe thing, and it was like, and it was every other word out of their mouth was like, babe, with this. Oh, babe, give me a hand there. It's like,
Here's the thing: if you're calling guys babe, I actually kind of like it. That's a Tom Brady thing.
I call all people and guys babe because of Tom Brady.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, I'm a huge babe guy in general, but just not to your significant other like every
Yeah,
other
I
sentence. And then if you switch babe with puppy, like hard pass. Sorry, Laura, you're a hate in this category. I had a couple quotes that I liked from this. Nothing like super stellar. That was like, oh, mind bending. But what about yourself?
I had a few. I can start off with the one that we kind of held out. Was when Sam shows up to the bar, and Audrey Burton, the wife of the dude that his wife cheated on, was there.
Yep.
And she's like yelling at Shadow and calling him out. And Sam's by his side and just like makes out with him and just says, I don't know who you are, but you are such a cunt. And it was laugh out loud funny when I read it. It was perfectly delivered in the audiobook. I love that.
I like that one, and a good scene. And also, Odin brought her there for that reason too. He brought that woman from Shadow's past to kind of solidify this idea that he was a murderer. But one of the things I liked was the important thing to understand about American history is that it is fictional. Charcoal sketched simplicity for the children or the easily bored. I just thought it was a really well put way of like how American history is taught, you know, and just this idea that what we know, and it kind of ties into the Columbus idea too, of just like everything, history is written by the victors kind of vibe. And a lot of the stuff that, children are taught or that we were taught is just either complete bullshit or just embellished and not really how things actually went down. But I thought that was like a really succinct way of putting it.
Definitely makes sense. Yeah, my next one is you're going to have to kind of know my background. So this was more of a personal one from me and my chicken wing theory. I'm not going to get into it right now because that would be its own podcast in itself.
But the general idea is that chickens are bred with like 8 to 10 wings, because where do all the other parts go when you eat chicken wings?
Well, specifically the economics behind the Super Bowl, where the demand for chicken wings spikes 100x. So how do you cover the demand, which in turn you just make chickens with more wings and is easily able to cover the demand for that period. Anyways, the quote was, they changed the name of Kentucky Fried Chicken to KFC because they don't serve real chicken anymore. Hint, hint. It's become the genetically modified mutant thing, like a giant centipede with no head, just segments of after segment of legs, breasts, and wings. It's fed through nutrient tubes. This guy said the government wouldn't let them use the word chicken. That makes perfect fucking sense to me. That is exactly right. Thank you.
Oh, when I read that, I said, this is going to be Keith's quotes.
100%.
So I'm so glad it showed up here because I knew it when they said the genetically modified thing. I was like, oh my God, he's totally on this.
Yep.
My last one is simply rigged games are the easiest to beat. And I thought that once again was just like a super succinct way of explaining Odin/Wednesday's entire plan. And they said it early and they said it somewhat often that I was like, you know, they did a good job in what all kind of con movies and books should do of putting the shit in the text. And it's your job to read it and to understand it, but you don't until the end. And then you're like, oh, cool. I get it. So
okay.
I like
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got two more. I'll go through them quick here. Quote, "Fuck off, you crazy bear boo white ghost. You give me the creeps," said Harry Blue Jay conversationally. How do you say that conversationally? I was like, wait, what? Hey, fuck off, you crazy babu white ghost. You give me the creeps. Is that even, how is that possible?
That was good. That's a good line reading.
But that,
holy smokes, you should be an actor. That was really good.
That was funny to me. And then the last one was, "Lady Liberty," said Wednesday. "Like so many of the gods America holds dear, a foreigner. In this case, a French woman. Although, in deference to American sensibilities, the French covered up her magnificent bosom." Or bosom, sorry, on the statue they presented to New York. Liberty is the end of the quote. But I thought that was funny. Have you ever thought of Statue of Liberty's bosoms? 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 What's the word?
Bosom.
Okay.
I haven't thought about her endowments, but I actually did read that quote as well, and I like that as well, and I thought it was interesting. So I'm with you on that front, although I'm not sure what a bosom is, but I like
angel lust. Or
yeah, I was hoping there was going to be another round of angel lust in there. Let's cast this movie quickly. I didn't have a lot here, and I didn't really look up who's in the show. Although I did know that Liev Schreiber's brother from The Wire, he plays Mad Sweeney. And the Odin character is the guy from Game of Thrones and lots of other things as well. He's more of a stage actor. But I thought when I saw that, I just saw that quickly and I was like, oh, he's perfectly cast. But what did you have for cast?
Yeah, I had for Shadow, I think this one is literally perfect. I had Keanu Reeves.
Interesting.
He plays the perfect go with the flow actor, like The Matrix, Devil's Advocate, The Replacements. But he just plays that guy that's like, whatever, man. Like I'll just I'll just go with it.
His Devil's Advocate character is probably your best argument. Like if we were going to send this to the studio and be like, we're thinking Keanu for this, like here's a copy of Devil's Advocate, like watch this.
But yeah, The Matrix too, where he like gets thrown into a new world and he's like, all right, I guess that makes sense. Like
yeah.
What about you?
Well, I mean, for Shadow, I once again, it's hard to not just say Idris Elba. I mean, he's just such a presence, and like Shadow is like a presence.
Idris Elba is almost like too good of an actor. That's the problem. Like Shadow, I feel like is like he's too mono. He's like too.
What are you saying? Idris doesn't have range?
No, Idris has too much range. That's like the problem with that. You know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't.
Yeah, I think he'd do anything. I just think that like he's big, beautiful, and mysterious. You know?
Okay.
So he has those eyes that you're like, there's something more in there.
Yeah.
I don't want him doing his Wire accent. You know what I mean?
Hey, I think he has a good American accent. I didn't know he had a British accent for all the Wire.
Oh no, neither did I. I didn't know that Stringer was. I mean, when I first watched that, I didn't know that Stringer was British. But I just meant I don't need his West Baltimore accent. But I think he could play it down and be a really good Shadow.
Yeah. All right.
What else?
Mr. Wednesday, I think this one's obvious. Anthony Hopkins. I feel like he's the perfect cop.
Well, he is. He plays Odin in the Thor movies.
Wait, what?
He plays Odin in all the Marvel movies.
Odin's in Marvel movies?
Yeah, he's in the Thor movies.
I haven't watched any of those. All right, that makes
really?
Makes sense.
What? Yeah. You haven't seen those movies? I thought you were a
I'm
nerd.
an anti-superhero movie person because they all suck now.
Wow. Okay. Well, then, great call. I don't know if that like hit you subconsciously or not, but he plays Odin.
Like he plays the con man like amazingly. I don't know if you've seen like Fracture or I'm trying to think of
Yeah. Wait, is that the one with who's
Ryan
who's
Gosling.
the actor? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Gosling.
great movie.
That's a great
Yeah,
movie. That's a
that's
really
who
good
I'm
movie.
thinking of like Wednesday. Him playing that same person who he's like knows everything or knows more than everyone else, but like is kind of not letting that on type thing.
Yeah, I mean it's so on the nose that he actually like studios actually cast him. So like maybe you need a new job like to work for Disney and
Noted.
start casting
Noted.
characters. Well, for Odin, I had Michael Gambon or Gambon, I don't know, but he's like the second Dumbledore. So British older guy. I just think he'd make a good Wednesday Odin. Like he also is. He's in one of the heist movies. I think one of the ones we talked about. Maybe it's the Italian Job actually, but yeah, I think he'd
Yep,
be really good.
makes
In that.
sense. I only had two more because there was so many characters. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna narrow it down.
Yeah, yeah. Shoot through them. What do you got?
Sam, I did Margaret Qualley. She's the hippie girl in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So you know what I'm talking about, who Brad Pitt picks up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So just like the
Yeah,
goofy
love
kind
her.
of carefree. I thought that would just be perfect for Sam.
That's a great
Yeah.
pull. I literally had to Google her, and I was like, "Oh, right, that's the chick." And this looks like Sam to
Yep.
me. So great pull.
And then Mr. World, Nick Cage, obviously. So that's easy.
Oh, done. I mean, Nick Cage could play Loki without
He's
question.
Mr. World. I
So
don't. I mean, that's it. But I don't even know if he's playing a character. He's just Mr. World. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, well, it is Loki, and it also turned out like Shadow was cellmates with Loki in jail. So like, can Nick Cage
Connor.
play like a convict? He
Somehow
sure
it
can. We
always
know.
comes back.
Send the clip to the studio.
Well, yeah.
The only other one I had was Alan Ray Tudyk for Mad Sweeney. He's the guy from The Knight's Tale, who's the redheaded guy, who's like a little bit out there. I don't know if you remember him.
He plays the pirate in Dodgeball.
Yeah, in Dodgeball. Yeah, in Dodgeball.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
that
pirate.
makes perfect sense. Yeah, they're pirates and Irish
Yeah.
people are the exact same thing. So I can say that as an Irish person. I'm allowed to. So
Well, there were Irish pirates. There's actually a very famous Irish female pirate.
interesting.
That's for another. That's for another podcast. All right, let's wrap it up. Would you recommend this book to our listeners, Keith? What do you got?
No, you know where I
Oh
stand.
my God, no!
This one's gonna be probably end up on one of the bottom of the list. Again, if this are 10 hours, this ends up in the middle of the pack for rankings of book. 20 hours of this was too much for me. I'm not smart enough for it. Put it at the bottom of the list. Common man chooses this as a non-common book.
Middle of the pack for me. I would say if you were trying to read a Neil Gaiman book, this would not be the one I suggest. Just like you said, for length in general. I thought the book itself was like super interesting, obviously well researched. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I mean, it's not a spin-off, but if this was like a sitcom, you know, the spin-off Anansi Boys is really good. It basically takes the whole Anansi character and does a more linear story just involving Anansi and his son. You know, I wouldn't say that this is a good intro. I'd say if you read that one, Stardust was also great. And if you like graphic novels, check out Sandman. And if you like all of those things, then definitely read this because I think you'll
So
like it.
yes or
But
no, we didn't get a binary.
it's a yes. It's a yes. I would recommend this book. Yeah. At the end of the day, I would 100% recommend this book. I mean, you know, it's like movies for me. Like most of them I'd recommend you do. I mean, there's a little more time suck with books, but I would say start off small with other game and stuff and then feel it out from there. So this was American Gods, and I'm glad we had taken a little hiatus because it was such a long book and we hadn't talked to each other. So I'm glad we were able to catch up and not get this book out of the way, but finally be able to share our feelings on this because usually we're kind of back and forth on stuff chatting, and this one we were kind of silent on. So I'm glad to know where you stand. But what do we have slated for next?
City of Thieves. It is by David Benioff, the guy from Game of Thrones. I had read it once previously. I didn't remember it at all. So yeah, looking forward to chatting about that one next.
I didn't know that he wrote books. I just thought he wrote Game of Thrones. So he wrote that and 25th Hour and some other stuff. Yeah, I mean, I just started the book. I'm really enjoying it. So I'm excited to catch up with you soon and discuss that. And for everyone else out there, thanks for checking in. Hope you guys checked out American Gods. And if not, catch up with us on City of Thieves. Either way, See you later, Sammy. Got
Bye.
him.
Get